Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Yeah, you never had pole here. Can ask that to many drivers why they never had pole here, right? I mean, that's just what happens. But the last few years, yeah, it's not been easy. I mean, 2022 there was a good opportunity, but you need to, of course, put enough fuel in the car for qualifying. And then, of course, it would have changed the perception a bit, because I hear this now the whole week. You know, never had a pole, never won here. Well, fantastic. But yeah, now finally the car is a bit more just all round, it seems. We've always been, I would say, a little bit weaker on high, like super high downforce for whatever reason. But for us to be this competitive for sure is very promising. Okay, whatever happens tomorrow happens, but even for upcoming races where you're not always running the super high downforce, I think it will be nice if we can just.
Did you know that Max Verstappen exploded at Lando Norris just after qualifying for the Singapore GP? What seemed like a simple annoyance turned into a furious statement, leaving the entire paddock silent. Before continuing, let me know your opinion in the comments. Do you think Verstappen was right to point the finger at Norris? Because what happened in the final seconds of Q3 could completely change the relationship between Red Bull and McLaren for the remainder of the championship. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we'll break down Max Verstappen's frustrating words after qualifying for the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix, where the Dutchman, despite having the most balanced car of the season, lost pole position due to a circumstance that left him completely out of his mind. Throughout the week leading up to the race, attention had focused on the new aerodynamic package, an evolution aimed at improving downforce in slow corners, the car's historical weakness on this street circuit. Verstappen knew it. It was his best chance to demonstrate that Red Bull was still in the championship fight and, at the same time, to conquer the only track on the calendar that still eluded him. From the first free practice sessions, the tension was palpable. The RB21 seemed more balanced than ever, with predictable behavior on corner entry and exit, something Verstappen had been requesting from his engineers for months. Modifications to the front wing, the new floor geometry, and improved airflow around the diffuser yielded positive results. The Marina Bay circuit is one of the most demanding on the calendar, not only because of its narrow layout and extreme humidity, but also because of the precision required on each flying lap. Any mistake, any slight alteration in the clean air or tire temperature can ruin an entire session. And that's exactly what happened. Verstappen started his final flying lap with promising pace, setting lap times that put him very close to Russell's provisional pole. But in the final sector, just as he was supposed to unleash the RB21's full potential, he encountered the McLaren of Lando Norris, who was slowly making his way back to the pit lane after completing his previous attempt. That seemingly insignificant moment changed everything. The dirty air generated by Norris's car affected the aerodynamic flow over the Red Bull's front wing, generating understeer just before the chicanes at turns 16 and 17. On a circuit where every thousandth of a second counts, that tiny mismatch was enough to ruin the lap. Verstappen had to abort, raising his hand in a gesture of helplessness as he crossed the line, knowing he had lost a pole position that, based on pace, was within his grasp. What followed was an outburst of frustration and pent-up anger, the reflection of a pilot who feels that what should depend solely on his talent ends up being conditioned by external factors. When qualifying ended, Max Verstappen didn't hold back. As soon as he got out of the car, still holding his helmet, he approached the media and spoke a phrase that resonated throughout the paddock. That's what happens when you have a car in front of you cruising 2 seconds ahead. It's written down. It will be remembered too. That last sentence was what changed everything. It wasn't a simple vent, but a statement full of meaning, a direct warning that made it clear that the incident with Norris wouldn't go unnoticed. Max's face revealed more than just annoyance. It was a mixture of frustration and determination, the expression of someone who feels something that was rightfully his has been taken away from him. The tone of his voice reflected a suppressed rage, that of a driver who knows that the margin between glory and disappointment can be measured in thousandths of a second. Verstappen wasn't just talking about the traffic on the track. In reality, he was betraying the tension that surrounds him at this point in the championship, That feeling that every detail, every mistake, or every obstacle conspires against him. What for many was a momentary complaint, for Verstappen was a declaration of emotional war. When he said that he will be remembered, he wasn't referring to a simple anecdote, but a warning to all those who compete around him. He doesn't forget, and every obstacle becomes motivation. For Verstappen, that moment was the culmination of a day where he had done everything right, where his car worked at its limit, and where the difference between pole and second place was decided by an unforeseen event beyond his control. In the Red Bull garage, the silence following his statements was almost awkward. The engineers knew Max had reason to be angry. Giampiero Lambiase, his trusted engineer, summed it all up with a phrase over the radio as soon as he crossed the line. "You can thank your teammate for that. Bad luck." That irony revealed the same feeling Max carried inside. The frustration of a team that had worked for days to provide a competitive car and, in a matter of seconds, saw a pole position that seemed assured to disappear. That connection between driver and engineer revealed something deeper. Red Bull not only shared the annoyance, but also understood that the situation went beyond a simple qualifying session. Verstappen's statement wasn't a gratuitous attack or a simple moment of tension. It was an emotional outpouring that encapsulated everything that racing at the highest level means. Behind every word was a message for his rivals and his own team. Max isn't willing to accept defeats caused by external factors. Every bout of frustration, far from weakening him, seems to fuel his fiercest instincts. And that energy, channeled in the right direction, is often the prelude to a devastating response on the track. The reaction inside the Red Bull pit box was immediate and overwhelming. The technical team, led by Giampiero Lambiase and Paul Monahan, instantly grasped the magnitude of the moment. It wasn't just about losing pole position, but about seeing a perfect lap shattered by external interference beyond their control. The cameras showed the engineers staring at the monitors with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. They knew the pace was there, that Max had executed a flawless lap up to that point, and that the updates to the RB21 had finally paid off. That's why the frustration in the garage was so palpable. They'd done everything right, but the outcome robbed them of the opportunity to crown what looked like a perfect weekend. Giampiero Lambiase, always calm, was the one who took on the role of balance. Over the radio, he tried to calm things down with brief, calculated phrases, but even his calm tone couldn't disguise the collective annoyance. Red Bull had been working for weeks on the new aerodynamic setup for this Grand Prix. A front wing with revised camber, an engine cover with optimized exhaust vents, and a more aggressive approach to thermal management. Every element of the RB21 had been fine-tuned for Singapore, with the goal of restoring Max's confidence he'd lost on street circuits. And just when the car was finally performing as it should, an incident in the final seconds of Q3 ruined the entire plan. Helmut Marko also expressed his disappointment. In a statement afterward, he acknowledged that the car had responded better than expected, and that the performance was there to win. However, what worried him most was Verstappen's mental state. Marko knows that Max is a competitor who performs best when he feels in control, and that frustration can turn into unnecessary pressure if not channeled properly. Therefore, the team's priority that night in Marina Bay was to redirect that energy. The engineers met with Max in the Red Bull hospitality area to review data, show him the car's actual pace, and remind him that the team's work had been impeccable. This wasn't the time to blame, but to turn anger into determination. Inside the garage, the mechanics shared the same feeling of helplessness. They had seen how Verstappen squeezed every corner to the max, how he pushed the car to the limit without making any mistakes, and how the RB21 finally demonstrated a level of stability that had seemed unattainable months before. Every mechanic knew that this pole position would have been a just reward for their collective effort. On a competitive level, the situation also has significant implications for the championship. Finishing second on a circuit where overtaking is so difficult can be a foregone conclusion. The start at Marina Bay is tight, tire degradation is high, and strategy depends heavily on the exact timing of the safety car, something that is often unpredictable. Red Bull knows this. A lost pole position in Singapore isn't just a position, it's an opportunity that is rarely repeated. These types of results force the team to be more aggressive in their strategic approach to the race, seeking to take risks with tire selection or the pit stop window. But every risk comes with a price, and when the tension is this high, any mistake can be devastating. Emotionally, this kind of frustration can have two effects on Verstappen. On the one hand, he can unleash his most intense self, the kind we saw in seasons where he dominated with authority and turned every small setback into pure motivation. Red Bull is aware of this and has already begun to manage the issue carefully. Laurent and Lambiase know that the frustration of Singapore can be transformed into emotional fuel if harnessed correctly. That's why the approach to work after Saturday was completely different. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, the team spent the hours before the race highlighting everything that went right. The car worked, the pace was there, and the gap to McLaren was minimal. They wanted Max to understand that the defeat wasn't technical or performance-based, but circumstantial. And when a driver like him feels his machine is up to par, confidence is quickly restored. In the media environment, Verstappen's words generated an immediate echo. The international press began to speculate about possible tension with Lando Norris, rekindling the narrative of a rivalry that dates back to their days in lower categories. Social media amplified the conflict, turning his phrase, "he will be remembered," into a topic of debate. Some interpreted it as a sporting threat, others as an expression of helplessness. The truth is, Max doesn't tend to leave loose ends. If something bothers him, he keeps it bottled up, processes it, and returns it in the form of performance. And this often criticized attitude is also the foundation of his greatness. The big question now is how Verstappen will respond mentally. If he's proven anything throughout his career, it's that he's capable of transforming frustration into drive. After every bout of tension, superior performance usually emerges, a level of aggression and precision that borders on the relentless. The team knows this and, to a certain extent, relies on this psychological pattern. Therefore, Red Bull's internal work focuses not only on car settings, but also on keeping its driver in the best possible emotional condition. The post-race meetings have changed in tone, less cold-blooded analysis, more motivational focus. Red Bull plans to approach the upcoming races with a more aggressive philosophy. There's no longer any room for caution. The team is willing to take risks with tire selection, degradation management, and early undercuts if the situation allows. The goal is to recover points as quickly as possible, take advantage of any mistakes by McLaren, and prevent the championship gap from widening. Verstappen has called for more flexible race management without so many strategic restrictions, so he can react in real time to his rivals' moves. This change in internal communication can make all the difference in a calendar where every detail is becoming invaluable. That's why I want to ask you, do you think Verstappen will be able to transform this frustration into a comeback that will change the fate of the championship? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.